Imagine being 4 times richer than Jeff Bezos, or having so much power that the US government had to pass special laws just to restrain your company. Sounds crazy, right? At the peak of his career, John D. Rockefeller possessed exactly that kind of power. His wealth accounted for 1.5% of the total US economic output, which translates to roughly $280 billion in today's money. The engine behind this unbelievable wealth was his company, Standard Oil. During a time when oil demand was skyrocketing, he single-handedly controlled 90% of America's refineries and pipelines. Typically, fortunes this massive dissolved by the third generation, leaving the family with barely 10% of the original wealth. Yet, to this day, the Rockefeller family remains one of the wealthiest and most powerful dynasties in the world. Granted, they acquired most of their wealth through legal means, but as we know, legal doesn't always mean ethical. Let's take a closer look at the story of John D. Rockefeller, the ultimate symbol of wealth and power a century before tech and finance giants came to rule the world. From a modest childhood to a massive empire. John was born in New York in 1839. On the outside, he was an ordinary, quiet, and reserved child. His father, William Avery Rockefeller, was a complete enigma, a traveling con artist who posed as a doctor, selling home-brewed elixirs. Rumors even linked him to a horse-stealing ring, yet he loved dressing well and maintaining an aura of prosperity. In 1857, the family settled in Cleveland. John left high school to take a modest job as an assistant bookkeeper, earning a mere 50 cents a day. But he had much bigger plans. Combining his hard-earned savings with a loan from his father, he took his first step into business in 1859 by co-founding a commission firm. Cleveland's proximity to the Pennsylvania oil fields offered prime positioning, and Rockefeller seized the opportunity, stepping into the oil refining business in 1863. If you are expecting a heartwarming rags-to-riches story here, think again. Rockefeller was anything but soft-hearted. Even as a young man, he was a ruthless businessman. Within 2 years, he ousted his partner, teamed up with chemist Samuel Andrews, and brought in millionaire investor Stephen Harkness alongside Harkness's relative, Henry Flagler. Flagler's organizational genius perfectly complemented Rockefeller's financial discipline, laying the groundwork for what would become a vast empire. Standard Oil and ruthless tactics. In 1870, at just 31 years old, Rockefeller incorporated Standard Oil. Unlike his peers, he focused on refining rather than exploration and drilling, as refining carried far more stable costs and lower risk. His obsession with cost-cutting and waste reduction was legendary. Thanks to his dedicated R&D team, he even found ways to process high-sulfur sour oil, which others deemed useless waste, turning it into massive profits. However, the real secret to his success was his aggressive monopolistic strategy. In the first 3 months of 1872 alone, he bought out, shut down, or bankrupted 22 of his 26 Cleveland competitors. He negotiated secret deals with railroads to secure massive rebates on transportation costs. Under these conditions, smaller rivals simply couldn't compete. By the late 1880s, Standard Oil controlled 90% of American refineries. The company was widely depicted as a giant octopus, its tentacles wrapping not just around oil, but steel, copper, shipping, demagogues, and state houses alike. The giant falls, antitrust laws, and the Great Breakup. Eventually, this overwhelming control pushed the public and politicians over the edge. Driven by investigative journalists exposing the company's underhanded tactics and rising public outrage, the government was forced to act. In 1911, the U.S. Supreme Court ruled that Standard Oil violated the Sherman Antitrust Act, ordering the empire to be broken up into 34 independent entities. Today's giants like ExxonMobil, Chevron, and BP all trace their roots back to this very decision. Ironically, this breakup proved to be a blessing in disguise for Rockefeller. As the individual shares grew in value, his net worth multiplied, making him even richer. However, decades of relentless work and high stress had taken a severe toll on his health. Journalist Ida Tarbell described the hairless, pale Rockefeller of that era as one of the saddest objects in the world, laundering a dark past, true philanthropy, or image rehabilitation. At this critical turning point, Rockefeller shifted his focus towards something radically different: philanthropy. Established in 1913, the Rockefeller Foundation began pouring massive capital into public health, education, and scientific research. It helped establish the University of Chicago and funded the Rockefeller Institute for Medical Research. It pioneered modern medical education and backed the development of vaccines for diseases like meningitis and yellow fever. It funded the Green Revolution in agriculture, which is credited with saving up to 1 billion lives from starvation in the developing world. While his personal fortune stood at nearly $900 million in 1912, his estate was valued at just $26 million upon his death. He had given almost all of it away. But was this massive shift driven by genuine goodwill? Or was it a calculated move for tax write-offs, polishing a tarnished legacy, and securing a clean spot in history? The answer likely lies somewhere in between. How the wealth was preserved across generations. To this day, the Rockefeller family retains billions in net worth and holds undeniable influence. How did they preserve it so effectively? Family office model. They pioneered a centralized, full-service entity to manage all aspects of the family's investments, taxes, and legal affairs. Irrevocable trusts. They placed assets into protected trusts that heirs cannot easily alter or squander, shielding the fortune from lawsuits, creditors, and heavy taxation. The waterfall concept. They utilized tax-exempt cash value life insurance policies to pass wealth from one generation to the next without suffering tax erosion. Additionally, family members served as governors and senators over the decades, while the foundation continued shaping international public policy. In summary, John D. Rockefeller was a ruthless capitalist who mastered the system, exploited every loophole, and reshaped the rules whenever they no longer suited his ambition. His philanthropic efforts undeniably saved lives and revolutionized global healthcare and education. Yet his monumental legacy was ultimately built on the back of a system he manipulated to his own absolute advantage, making him a complex figure who embodies both the darkest and brightest sides of American capitalism.